welcome back to Worldbuilders Studio. I am Halli, your host. Thank you for joining us. I am super excited. Seriously, I had to be like, we need to go live because I'm just going to sit here and talk to Ty this whole time, which is what we're supposed to be doing here on Worldbuilders. Thank you for joining us again. This is our 5th episode already. I'm very surprised that I did more than one. So that makes me very happy. I was telling Ty earlier, I was like, oh, my friends all signed up because they're like, yeah, let's talk about world buildings and stuff and GMing and doing all this kind of thing. And then Ty was like, oh, I want to go. I'm like, oh, someone I don't know. Okay, this is good.
Yeah, everybody just invite me on. I'm willing to go anywhere right now. So,
and for good reason, which we will get into here. So Ty, if you will tell me who you are, in very short what you do, and then I want you to elevator pitch me this Kickstarter, and then we'll go from
elevator
there.
pitch.
Yeah, the 30-second blammo elevator pitch,
course.
And then we'll get into more detail.
So my name is Ty Burruss. I am Lottie Star on DeviantArt, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I'm part of the Dice Tyrants community, which is a TTRPG role play streaming community. We have, I think, a total of 40 members. We've got 4 shows a week, 5 shows if you count our podcast. And I GM for 2 of those. I personally have been GMing for 30 years. Oh, I'm so old. And I have a lot of experience in writing. I actually developed hacks for Fallout, for Forgotten Realms in the D10 system. I made a Avatar: The Last Airbender game at one point in the past. I've done constant writing for D&D and for White Wolf and for a variety of other things just here on the side. But myself right now, I have created Aether and Steamworks, which is a brand new TTRPG using a D20 system that is on Kickstarter at this moment, fully funded. We're at 120%, and we're looking to go further beyond, trying to reach some additional stretch goals to give us art books, additional world books, expansions. I want to create a whole token set and maps and things like that for GMs to use. And I'm looking into also doing, I do music on the side. I'm an artist as well. I also write and all that. And then I'm a dad, and I work at home, and I'm a computer programmer and all this. So many things. I am always busy. But anyways, looking to do things like art so that people can use that on their streams. People that do this stuff in the TTRPG community can use something without worrying, is this copywritten? Am I going to get into trouble for showing this on the stream? Is that a problem? Same thing for music and things like that. So those are long-term goals. If I can reach them and stretch, that'd be great. If not, there's something that'll come along down the road, I'm sure. So what is Aether and Steamworks? Like I said before, it is a new take on the D20 system. It is familiar to individuals who have played the greatest RPG of all time. I have played D&D many years since first edition, and while I am a fan in ways, I also felt that there was a lot of problems that they just never addressed with continuing in newer systems. So I decided originally that I was going to make a module for people to play here at home, and I was trying to figure out plans. What exactly do I want to play? I thought maybe I'll do something Redwall style. I like those cutesy little animal stuff once in a while. I thought, well, maybe I'll look into something futuristic. You know, we have Star Wars out there. Maybe there's a 5e Star Wars. Maybe we could do something like that. And then I went to my wife's work to drop her off a snack and a little coffee and said, you know, hon, what do I think? What should I do? What do we want to play? What does everybody want to play? And she just looks at me, and she's wearing steampunk earrings. And I went, you know, that's something we haven't done. Let's do that. I've always been kind of enamored of the Edwardian style, of the leathers and the unique technology aspect of steampunk. But I always wanted to make it bigger because it's so inclusive into just a very specific setting that it didn't quite fit what I wanted. So I started writing this module and thought, well, I needed to have this. I needed to have that. I wanted to have some of the problems that I've noticed in these other D20 systems resolved. One of those is turn stagnation. You take your turn in combat, which, you know, 5e is very heavy in combat. D&D always has been a tabletop game, even more so than role-playing. A lot of their skills and things like that, all their spells are not even directly designed to do cool stuff out of combat. Doesn't happen. So I wanted to resolve some issues with that. I wanted to resolve the turn stagnation thing. Big point for me. If you sit there and you get into combat and you have your turn and you say, I attack, and then you roll your D20 and you either hit or you miss their armor class and you're done. And then 20 minutes, 30 minutes go by and it's your turn again. You get 10 seconds, turn is done. 20 or 30 minutes go by, So I noticed, playing these games with friends that a lot of the time, sometimes they'd be engaged, sometimes they're worried if you're going to get close to dying, but a lot of the time they're looking at their phones, they're doing side talk, they're not being engaged. So I started working on these problems with it. And that's what Aether and Steamworks hopes to address. Now, the system is not D20 as normal. It does have some simplified methods in it. You have 7 base stats. That's where all of your rolls come from. You have your agile, your aware, your brains, your strong, your blah, blah, blah. All of those things are all done with just a simple D20 roll. And that makes things move a bit quicker. But the big fix was reflexive actions. These are abilities or skills you can use at any time in combat. They're just snap decision moments where you can choose to do something. And the way I develop these are every single one of the classes has some of their own unique versions of these. Some are defensive, some are offensive, some are, they'll give some sort of benefit to your allies or some detriment to your enemies. So when you're sitting there playing and your turn ends, you have this reflexive action sitting in your pocket. You've got a card, and basically someone does something, and you say, "Okay, I can use this now. I can save my friend who's about to be shot by pulling a wall up out of the ground in front of him." That means that every single one of your players, at any time, combat or otherwise, are looking in there, being engaged, getting drawn into what everybody's going through, being part of a team that doesn't quite exist in a lot of other systems. Um, so what the game is at its core is something developed to make sure everyone is engaged, drawn in and tied in with their characters and with the other players around the table. When you create a character in the game, it's very easy. It's to start with, it's very, very simple. You choose your race, you choose your class, you give yourself some interesting quirks, and then you're good to go. And then every time that you level up, your level increases. You have I like to say complicated choices ahead of you that are simple. If you increase the level of your race, you get 3 new abilities you get to pick one of. And if you choose to increase the level of your class, you get 4 new abilities you get to choose one of. Every single one of these abilities is going to be relevant from the beginning of the game until the end. None of them start off feeling like, oh, well, this is just my parlor tricks at the beginning of the game. This is just, prestidigitation. I'll never use it again. This is not just something very tiny. They increase in skill or they're designed to work for you all the way through the game. So each one of these, as you level up, does the same thing. So you're developing exactly who you want your character to be as you increase your levels. You're very customized individuals um, with a lot of powerful skills that kind of determine what type of benefit you're going to bring to your party and to yourself. So if you go in as a mage, you're not necessarily just going to be tied into that. Well, I sit in the back and I throw fireballs from a million miles away. You can dictate, well, I also want to be able to sometimes mind control people. And sometimes I want to be able to think in a little bit of forward ways where I can read the future and deal with that. And, I do want to get in close in combat. So I'm going to by a few levels in Deathless and become a little more Death Knighty, and then march into combat, then swing my flaming axe, and then fire a fireball off. So every one of the classes you can kind of approach in a different way depending on how you level them up. But all of them have options that are available to not only combat, but also social scenes. So magic and abilities and everything in this game are designed to be imaginative and inventive. So when you're going to cast a spell, as an example, as a mage again, as an aether mage, if you decide to go the route of elements, you can control X amount of elements over X amount of space that can do X amount of things. So you can use them to help you overcome a challenge. You can create an ice ladder and use that to climb a wall. You can, cascade rocks down to block off an entryway. You can do that all from the very beginning because your character is good at controlling elements. So each one of the classes is very much unique in their own way as well. So I can talk forever. I'm just sitting here.
You're good. Because this is the part that I love about doing these talks is that I'm clearly getting to sit down with very passionate creators, and letting you all go is part of the reason why I wanted to do this to begin with. Because it's I swapped the art out to your little market scene here because it's just as you were talking about races and magic, and I just wanted to give people more of a feeling of what exactly they were looking for. If I can can pull back for just a second. So I was a good student and read the Kickstarter even before I backed it. But for those who are uninitiated, what exactly is the aether? What is that?
Aether is the essence of magic. If we were talking in how you can see it in from different media, it's similar to the way the force works. It's in everything, it's around everything. Aether is concentrated magic, but in the game that we're playing as, there is meta reasons for why it exists. It kind of emanates from one of the worlds in this universe, which there's 7 of them, in what's called the Aether Sphere, which is a self-contained solar system. You can't get out of it. Nothing can come in it. There are reasons for that will be released in future updates and expansions. But anyway, so magic is saturating everything within the sphere. And everybody has kind of evolved to deal with that. You aspirate, you get rid of it. Your body removes the negative aspects of magic the same way that you would like alcohol from the system, because you have systems in place that help remove toxins. So Aether is elemental magic. It's time and space. It's life and mind. It is death and entropy and corrosion, all combined into one thing. And every single being in this universe deals with that, manipulates it in some small fashion, and that kind of develops into what all the different classes are, how the races react, the reason that the world works the way that it does. And science and technology knows how to get in there and isolate certain parts of it to use for things. So if you need a fuel burning lamp, you have something that accesses fire aether, and you have magic that, lights up your streets. If you need to have your streets swept clean because they're completely covered in debris, you tap into entropy and corrosion, and you just turn it all into dust with these big machines as you're going trundling down the road.
Very cool.
So it's a high magic setting, where magic and technology are intertwined.
And because everyone is because it's just part of life, part of the aether sphere, does that mean that technically anyone can do magic then?
Yes, there's actually rules in the book for that as well.
Okay.
So
awesome.
So your characters in the game are above and beyond. They're heroes in their own story. They're the central characters in your television series Firefly style, where they do crazy stuff over the top and then they come back and so they have more access to this, and some bad guys obviously will do the same, but the general population can also kind of tap into it because it's just something that's a natural part of life. If you choose to try to create a magical effect and you're not someone who typically can use magic, the problem with Aether is that it is both chaotic and powerful. There is a chaos table of 100 outcomes for individuals who cast spells and do poorly, or who don't actually have control of it, that will have potentially catastrophic and story-changing consequences. So every single one of your players that are in the game, Aether mages are privy to this a lot. So in the games that I'm running, I have I have one player, Shannon, who plays Maz Harbitar. She's this orc shaman. She's an aether mage who goes out there and tries to do the right thing all the time, but constantly is trying to reach further than she probably should, and taps into this magic. For aether mages specifically, this allows them to double the power of any of their spells.
Okay.
But that also makes it so you have a 25% chance of having something bad happen or the spell going awry. Oof. That's basically it. And it's happened a few times. They were fighting a Kacha, which is a giant sand serpent that was trying to eat one of their players, and they're all getting in a fight with it, and she decides to reach into this and try to do something more powerful than she's supposed to.
Oh no. And
rolls, and the effect was the enemy you are targeting grows to double in size from where it's at, increasing its health by 50% and adding extra life and attack damage and all that to it. So they turned a difficult encounter. This thing was already 40 feet tall into something that was now 80 feet tall, Titanic sized. And they ended up having to have something that would have been a challenging fight turn into a really challenging fight.
Oh, man.
So it does bring a little bit of chaos in your game. And honestly, for those GMs out there that are scared of it, allowing players other than Aether Mages to have these effects occur is, optional for them.
Sure.
I do put that as a caveat in the book. Anything in there that doesn't make your game fun for you, don't use.
Yeah. That's a very, very...
That's work with these games anyways.
Yep. That's... I just love that mental image of of her orc shaman being like, "I'm got this," and then nope, don't got it.
She was like,
don't got it.
"Oh no!" I've had a character trying to draw this toxic material out of a person, accidentally turn it into giant tentacles that destroyed a house and they had to fight. I've had one player who was trying to draw on death magic to erode an enemy's face, turned butterflies all over the place that just kind of made everybody have a hard time seeing into this cloud because they were so dense. So, there's a lot of strange and unique aspects to what you can do with Aether, and that's another part of it. Aether is chaotic. It does require a lot of control. Alchemists study for years and years and years to find the safe way to use magic, and that is what develops what I've called quirks in my game. So quirks are required. Every single one of your classes or every single one of your races has at least one quirk. Some people end up having more at some point. And what they are is the effect of chaotic aether within the body that kind of becomes a little oversaturated in it over time. Every single quirk has a positive and a negative. Like one of these, and a lot of these you can kind of choose on your own. You develop your character how you want. Some people like to roll them randomly, some do not. There's 100 of them in the game. Roll a d100, that's what you get if you want to. One of these is, as an example, and they can be anything from a mental situation where you have certain ways you think and act, to social situations where people might change the way they react to you based on them, to physical conditions. This one's called I'm a Cactus. Your character develops a hard, rubbery surface skin with thorny protrusions that come out of it, giving them a small amount of extra protection and health. They can grapple people and stab them, but society views them as kind of monstrous, and then you get negative rolls to your social rolls. One of them is this quirk doesn't matter much, and in it you are the middlest of middle children. Nothing ever seems to be attributed to you. No matter what successes you have, somebody else always gets the credit. However, the benefit is people don't remember the bad things you do either, so you can get away with more sometimes.
Right. That would be the one I would be tempted to take.
And we have another one called Out of Time, where your character has dropped through a hole in time and space and come back in time, and sometimes that means they can remember the future and that gives them bonuses, but sometimes they remember it wrong or it's not the right future, so that gives them negatives to their rolls. So again, the game is quirky, the game is unique, and you can tell as serious or as comedic a game as you want with the system.
That is really cool to me. I do feel like certain systems, not to name anything in particular, but certain systems get their own reputations, right? We were talking about D&D being very, very combat heavy, and I think that's the one that I would like to pick on a little bit just because I can. But and that's the impression, right, that even outsiders get. It's like when you try to talk to people who don't have a friggin' clue what an RPG is, and they're like, you do what now? So you just like, and you're trying to explain this concept, and they're like, oh, D&D, well, it's got dragons in the name, so that must be what, and that system in particular doesn't feel like it is naturally inclusive of a lot of social situations, but a lot of players enjoy that. I don't know about you. I'm sure you've run 4-hour games where it's all social situations.
Yeah, I absolutely have. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is that Dungeons and Dragons is the biggest target, so it's easiest to pick on, but there are a lot of other games out there that kind of do it. Some of them do social settings better. I mean, if you've ever played a White Wolf game like Vampire the Masquerade or Exalted, they're really non-combat focused, but their combat kind of sucks. So when it comes to social circumstances, everybody I'd seen when we've been playing 5e pretty much made their own fun. The game wasn't designed to do that for you. It wasn't designed to have systems in place that will help you express that. If you want to have a social campaign and you've got 90 skills and none of them do anything for you when you're in a social situation, then the game's mechanics are kind of stepping against what you're trying to do. So that is obviously something that occurs in that game. So I am a firm believer that your system is very important to what story you want to tell when you're playing it. There's a Kickstarter out there now, Locus, which is like just about to come out. If you're trying to play a horror game,
Hmm.
you're looking for something that really kind of develops an atmosphere and has system mechanics in place to make you feel like, this is scary. I don't want to die. I don't want. They use your flaws, your character's flaws, or what you roll. So if you're too clumsy, then you're likely to fall down the stairs while being chased by Jason. Whatever it is
Right.
that they have. So the system is important for that. And the way I've developed this one, I try to make it broad enough so that it can cover an array of different games. You can play a low technology game. You can play a low magic game if you don't want to have a whole bunch of Aether mages in it. You can play a high technology game. You can play spacefaring and travel. But any game that you play in this setting is still pretty much going to be an Aether and Steamworks game because of the way the
Yeah.
classes are developed, the way the races are designed to work with each other. So when you play this game, as opposed to a lot of other systems agnostic games, there's a lot of heart, a lot of story, a lot of interconnectedness for how the world works, the reasons why it works, the reasons why the political scene is the way that it is. And I feel like when you develop a character in this game, you end up in a position where you're like, I know who I am. I
Yeah.
know how I would react to these circumstances. I can see why they have these biases or why they have these ideals and how I'm going to play that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but just from my understanding in the reading of the Kickstarter material, I was looking at, you've got these really great quirks lists that can instantly give you that mental image, which allows players to feel like they have that connection with the character that just is a page, for
Mhm.
lack of anything else. They don't really know who this person is yet until they start playing them, but they
Yeah.
have that image, all the way to, you've done something that I absolutely wanted to point out, which is you're giving people story hooks, and not just
Yes.
like 5 of them. You're giving, what, 100?
Yeah, more
Oh,
than that, actually.
yes.
So, I mean, I'm a GM at heart. I'm a storyteller at heart. I've been like I said jamming for about 30 years, and I'm always looking for, how do I tie these things together in such a way that when my characters are playing, they feel like they're in a living breathing world.
Yeah.
They feel like they can do anything, but they have these things that they really want to accomplish. So, getting that little bit of assistance is necessary. Every single one of my worlds has very unique hooks related to the goings on that are in those worlds. Even the character creation starts hooks, right? So I had a campaign I ran called Silver Shield with the Dice Tyrants over the last year. That was a game that was taking place on the Empire's home world, Silver Shield. The Dwarven Empire is there. It is a planet that is filled with mithril and is relatively unexplored, for a better word, that has led into this mithril rush situation. There are colonists heading out west, and they're going into these places in the various worlds there, and trying to find mithril and trying to find fortune and trying to create their own societies and things like that. So you end up with this Wild West setting, right? So we had 4 characters there. We had 3 members who decided, what would be an interesting way to get this game started. So we had 2 characters who were battle scarred. They're individuals who have been through combat. They've dealt with it for a long time. They have some mental defects because of it, some PTSD type responses and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them, one of them was a chancer, which is a halfling. Chancers have a bad rap. They've been targeted by genocide on the dwarven side, which is explained in the book and why it happened, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and by society standards, they're kind of left in the cracks. So when he first created this character, he went, I don't like the Empire, obviously. They've killed a bunch of my people in the past. They've turned some of them into monsters. My character, not liking the Empire, grew up in orphanages on Avalon, a really large city where nobody took care of him very well, and moved into a life of crime. He was a mercenary, and he started fighting against, Empire ships as they traveled through the void and went here to there and here to there. And he's like, so where do we start the game at? I just escaped the prison colony on Silver Shield. There's a massive, it's basically like Australia. Unfortunately, it's an island in the middle of nowhere. People were imprisoned there by Silver Shield, and it's their maximum security compound. So he's like, well, I came from there. And the other player went, well, I used to work for the Empire. I was XDAD, the Defense Against Aether Department.
Oh my
I
gosh.
found myself murdering people that probably didn't deserve it just because they were magic types and the Empire doesn't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually turned against my own superiors, and then they imprisoned me on this place too. So we had two individuals who escaped that place with one who was a chameleon, which is an automaton who can take the form of others. It's like a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica.
So good.
He was sent on a mission to find someone, and through sheer his quirk was extraordinarily ordinary. He was so ordinary that people never believed he could possibly be ordinary, and would also levy their own ideas on what fantastical things this person might have done. So the very first thing that happened was he was falsely accused of destroying an Empire ship and sent to this prison with these individuals. Just because there's no way that this particular individual was so chill and not guilty in any way. So he and them, they escaped. They crash landed on this little place called Danholm, on the East Newhold, and then went to this little city called Danholm, which was where the other two players were at. One of them was an ex-university alchemist who left the university because she hated politics and wanted to help people. And one of them was a Jack, which Jack of all trades. The Jack in my game, as they level up, they start being able to pick skills from other classes. So you can kind of get a mix of a few different things you want to have. He had a father who worked in the Empire who was missing for some reason, who never really told him what his job was because it was all too important. And so they all kind of met up, and that's just starting. That was based on their character class choices. That was based on their quirk choices. That was based on, what they chose to do with their classes. And that it really tied together a story that started moving forward from the first episode, from the very first time that the characters picked it up.
Oh my gosh.
Turned out that one of the characters had killed Jeb's father because he worked in the DAD, and it turned into this big thing. And then, anyway, there was a lot to it.
The drama.
And the drama. It was wonderful. It led into some serious emotional scenes. We actually explored what it might be like to have mental illness problems, depression, loss, and familial issues. And they fought against this individual named Jorgen Coffee, who owns the coffee plantation in southwestern Newhold, and kind of is trying to control the region. So for them, this guy was a big bad guy, and turns out he really was. So I turned Coffee against my players who hated that because they all love coffee.
You'll never look at it the same again.
It led to a lot of espresso related jokes and stuff, so it was worthwhile. Anyway, so again, that's an example of how when you create your characters, you kind of know where they're going from. Another campaign that I was in, we had a Tuesday elf. They're elves who try to just fit into society as best they can. They're trying to just slip past the radar until enough time has passed. The Empire is no longer hunting them. People don't think elves are a horrible monstrosity anymore, and they can come back out of the shadows and just be fine. So she tried to hide and ended up on a messenger ship. The messengers are like the galactic post office. They travel to planets and they deliver letters and things like that. And it turns out that, her Destiny King calling for her anyway. So she tried to hide as an elf, ended up being ousted. The crew had to be, are we okay with elves? Are we not? Is the Empire really something? We're going to have this confrontation if Jackie comes out and turns out that she is an elf. How do we deal with that? That was an immediate choice that had to be made from the very beginning. It's like, okay, so are your characters pro or con Empire? What are their beliefs? Yeah.
That just that, again, that image of these three people from the prison planet, and they break out and then they crash a ship, and that all happens. Like, that would be a whole arc, or part of an arc in a lot of other games. And the fact that you went from 0 to 60 out the gate before you ever even fully started. And that just for me, as someone who has taught a lot of RPG systems, and I'm sure you have as well, like, it can be really hard to get new players going. And this, again, just feels like you've taken all those things you've learned over the years and said, this is open land for all players. Doesn't matter whether you're an expert or you're brand new and you're like, what's an RPG? What's a D20? That's a totally fair question if you've never played an RPG before. But with these pieces built in, people can start latching on.
The weight of my game pretty much just lies on the GM's shoulders, which is pretty common for TTRPGs in general terms.
Mhm.
For a new player that comes in, creating a character takes like 30 minutes, maybe an hour at the most, which is really fast
That's
for
fast.
some games.
Yeah.
It has just like so if you're a halfling, you get these stats. Now go pick your class. Now you get these stats and you get these 4 abilities. This is your core foundation of who you are. Now your choice comes in what quirks do you want to have? What virtue is your driving virtue? Which is something we haven't talked about yet either. So there are a couple of mechanics in my game that help it feel heroic. Sometimes the dice can be unfair to you. Sometimes, too much randomness doesn't lend itself to success. One big example pretty commonly is stealth encounters in TTRPGs. You're trying to sneak, one roll, yeah, I got it. I'm high enough up there not to be noticed for 5 seconds. And then I'm moving forward.
Right.
All right, make another roll, your GM says, because you stepped on a twig or you got closer to the compound. Suddenly, oh, I didn't make it.
Yeah.
Okay, I immediately lost stealth. We're now fighting.
Yeah.
In this game, it does have some leniency towards destiny going awry, towards fate not working out in your favor, Lady Luck being angry at you, whatever you want to call it, your dice needing to go to jail. And that is in 2 forms, aces and virtues. So aces are something every character is given at the beginning of an episode, the beginning of a session.
Mm-hmm.
They get 1 of those. That allows you to re-roll any of your rolls, combat damage or defenses, or anytime you roll the d20, anytime you roll any of your dice, you can say, well, I'm going to ace that. I need this to do better. I don't want to fail on this. And you can store up to 3 of those. So that's one way. So if your players are going through an entire session, they're like, well, I never really needed one. Now they have 2. Or if they're savvy and they know they're going to need to have as much luck in their corner as possible because the big bad's about to happen, they can sit back and go, oh, I'm not using those aces. I'm not using them. And you as a GM can sit there and go,
yep.
Anyway, so aces are one way. The next way is virtues. Every single person has virtues, and once per episode, you can say, I enact my virtue, or you can try to enact your virtue. And these things are compassion and wisdom and temperance and self-control and all of these things that are out there. What they allow you to do is, if you're trying to accomplish a task that is in line with your virtue, you can argue with your GM if you fail that I would like to say that right now I'm trying to save babies from a burning building. I would say that this is compassion. So, and if your GM agrees, you can re-roll. So it's another option.
Oh my gosh, sorry, I had to. And neighbor dog, sorry.
Barky barks.
Barky barks. That dog hates the cat. So I again, that's just, it's that reimagining, or that looking at how can I take something that most people who have played certain systems are very familiar with, and how do I make this? It almost feels like, and again, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it almost feels like you're more balanced toward an even or a more even player experience for everyone.
Yes.
Because I have been in those parties where, and I think a lot of people have, again, where you get in that party, fighters up front or the barbarians up front, mages in the back, archers up in the tree, and while you're waiting on your turn, someone just by either getting a crit because they have a massive battle axe, or getting a crit on a fireball spell or whatever it may be, and then you down the big bad maybe before you even had your turn.
Yeah, it's like, well, I didn't get to do anything today, but we sat here for an hour while we waited to do it, so that was good.
This just feels like it's not a little, a lot more even-handed to giving everyone that chance to be a hero.
That's the attempt. When you're playing games, the most fun I have ever had as a GM is when you look around the table and everybody's smiling because they feel badass, they feel accomplished, they got to live the power fantasy. The character that they're playing did something amazing and it came out great. I wanted a game that epitomized that. I want it to feel that way for your players, so that you as a GM can say, yeah, right, well, you took on this big bad guy and you took out the ship in 10 ways and you jumped through space and you fired your gun in midair and blah blah blah, and it succeeded somehow magically.
Yep.
The game does still have the opportunity for threat, for danger, for that sensation that GMs like to sometimes impart, like, oh no, that thing's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
Combat in this game happens to be system based, so every time you roll to do damage, you roll a d8 alongside it. and that shows where you hit.
Okay.
So when you get shot in the arm, you have a certain amount of health in your arm, and suddenly your arm now is wounded, and you gain what are called distractions. Distractions are anything that impedes your ability to do actions that gives you a minus related to how many you have to every single one of your rolls. So if your arm is wounded, you have 2 distractions, you're -2 to all your rolls. Suddenly, oh no, things are not great. I need healed. I need to have this patched up. I need to,
Right.
pull out all the stops to try to succeed. Um, when you are attacked, enemies are seen as very dangerous. They will sometimes do things that could potentially one-shot you, but the tools are in place to defend your allies, to take care of yourself. There are things there in place that, as long as you are playing in a team kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time you will never have any problems with things. And of course, I have systems in place that'll make sure that, if you get down, there's ways to not be dead and not
Right.
lose your favorite character ever.
Right.
um and when that happens, though, when a character does go down, when it is that last moment and they've perished, it's going to feel very impactful because they've already done a whole bunch of heroic deeds, they've done a whole bunch of amazing actions, everybody has all these stories with them, and it's a very rare occurrence. So even if you die, there are ways to bring you back, but there are limits on it. It still puts you in a position where it's like, ah, crap.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it that idea that that kind of big magic, I'll call it for lack of a better word, has consequences, or it should have
Yes,
consequences? Okay.
absolutely. I mean, even magic itself is consequential.
Right.
The way that you use abilities in this game isn't like spell slots or, the kind of stuff that you see in some other games. You can use an X amount of times a day. Well, there
Mm-hmm.
are abilities that can only be used a certain amount of times per episode or per scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you have what's called your limit and your overload. Your limit is basically your max, and your overload is basically your magic points. It's how many abilities you can use. If you have 5 limit, you can use 5 abilities. And then you have to decide if you want to have consequences happen after the fact. If you reach your limit, you can go over it. If you go over it, you start taking damage to your health directly. So you can start trading off. And when you start out early in the game, the hit dice for this game is a D4 only. Everybody's going to have a flat starting health
Mm-hmm.
plus an amount of health based on a D4 system. So you don't have a lot. I mean, by the time that you reach max level in this game, you might have between like 50 and 70 health maximum. And
Okay.
some enemies will be able to do quite a bit of damage to you. And in the beginning of the game, taking that one overload, going above your limit at 1 point of damage, could be the difference between being conscious and unconscious.
Right.
So every time you go over, you take damage equal to how far you are over. 1 point over is 1, 2 point over is 2, 3 point over is 3, 4 point over is 4. Suddenly you're looking at 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, whatever. It goes up
Yeah.
pretty fast.
Yeah.
So it does give you that resource management situation where you're trying to figure out, all right, I know I need to down this bad guy. I have this power. I'm out of points.
Yeah.
What do I do? How am I going to handle it? How am I going to handle it?
Yeah. And hopefully leading toward a little more creative thinking, which also keeps everybody engaged.
Yeah.
Because if you've got 2 party members out of 4 who are out of abilities and they're done, then you're going, oh, now what do we do? Well, crap, this is bad.
It's like, well, I'm going to save one of my actions so that on my allies or my enemy's turn, as they're going after my allies, I can do X. I can jump in the way. I can add some defenses up. I can counter their poorly worded argument that's going to hurt your feelings in the case of social situations. Whatever it is that you need to do, there are choices for you. And like I said, when it came to abilities, the ability to use them just in combat is not a thing. If you're looking to deal with a puzzle, as an example, you don't just have firebolts to shoot fire at people. You have the ability to create things that you need to create and do things you need to do with your skills. So you can turn, there's one ability that the battle scarred have called reflexive dodge roll. It allows them to kind of Shatner roll or flip their way out of danger at any point in time. It gives you 10 feet of movement, which is, I have all movement in this game, all weight in this game is all just a flat number, basically. It's weight is for how much things weigh, range is for how far things can go. And all of them, every single square of range is like 5 feet or 1.6 meters or whatever it is,
Okay.
so roughly. So you have 2 range on reflexive dodge roll. That allows you to move 10 feet away, gives you a bonus to your defenses, allows you to reflexively at any point in time decide to jump aside. So an enemy's running at you, they've only got melee weapons, and they try to reach you, and they're right at the edge of their running distance, and you just jump aside. They no longer get to swing and attack you because you're not in their threatened space.
Right.
But using that to jump in the way of an ally who's getting attacked, instead defending them, using it to move forward further when it's not quite your turn so you can get closer to accomplishing something, using it to go upward because you can move that 2 squares, allows you to jump. And you could run up to an area, you leap, and then you say, I enact reflexive dodge roll to give myself a chance. I plant my foot on the side of a wall, I leap up higher because I needed to get 30 feet and I only made it 20.
Right.
So using your abilities creatively is very much what this game was designed to do. If you're in a social situation and you have control over magic again, and somebody is really into flowers that you're talking to, and you just throw one, it'll potentially give you some benefits when it comes to achieving your goal with discussion with them. And being able to read minds, I don't know how many times my players. So most recent episode of Clockwork Zephyr that I just ran last Thursday, one of my characters is a Miscegnate. They are a cobber. What that is basically his father was a eternal of life and mind magic. So it's like having a elemental parent who does healing and can read people's minds and things like that.
Nice.
So he's a captain on the ship who was abducted by a bounty hunter, and then a new captain just stepped in place. One of the other players is like, I'm just going to be the captain now. And so he came back to the ship and wanted to know who was loyal to him anymore. So he broadcast out his power coming from his blood that allows him to read the surface thoughts of everyone around him.
Oh my God.
He found out lots of the crew was happy to see him back, some of them a little exuberantly so, which was kind of funny and cute. And then he found out, because everything on this game can either critically fail or critically succeed, he found out with a critical failure that one of his allies was scheming with one of the other pirates on the ship to replace him or get rid of him. Which turned into a whole new scene. Right. So that's something I want to bring out too. This game, it's something I've been doing for a really long time, but there's an argument that goes around all the time on Twitter or between GMs or whatever. What can be a critical success? What can be a critical failure? And in this game, everything can be, but it's handled in a unique way. So if you get a critical failure or a critical success, you are to give your players 2 choices. One, do you want to make what you're doing twice as effective or fail and cause potentially problems to you? Or do you want it to do something to the surroundings? Do you want it to increase your allies' capabilities? Do you want it to make your enemies stronger? Do you want to damage things around you that maybe shouldn't be damaged because you're trying to get a book off the top shelf and the whole thing collapses and the library now is completely filled with scattered books and your whole party now has to pay for damages to a library that they didn't want to have to deal with to begin with, all because you really needed that one book? That's the idea behind it, giving players the choice. How do you want your critical to go? Do you want to do extra damage? Do you want to make it so that the armor on this opponent happened to be shattered by that strike and it falls off of him and now your allies are going to have an easier time attacking them? I had one character named Zeta. I'm calling you out. They were on Rulo, dangerous planet, homeworld of the orcs. Everything there is trying to eat you because it's a really harsh dog-eat-dog style environment. And they had... So they were supposed to go out and collect Duandong, which are like these... they're basically the cattle of orcs. 2 of them had escaped during a storm. They're supposed to go out and get them. They had gotten into a batch of madcap mushrooms and had gone berserk. So the players were supposed to collect them without killing them.
Oh my gosh.
But 2 of our players didn't really know how to deal with that. And one of them is gifted. So the gifted are like if warlocks had a patron who was very engaged in what you're doing at all times. So his patron was like, bloodlust, we must kill this thing, wipe it out, it injured you, how dare it is so weak, it should die.
Oh no.
And they ended up killing them, all but one.
Ah.
So the carnage drew in the surrounding, because every creature is looking to scavenge, looking to survive. They put Zeta on watch. And she starts walking around. I'm like, okay, go ahead and roll your aware. Let's see if you can keep an eye out for anything that might be approaching that might cause problems. Critical failure. No additional rolls available. Didn't have any other options. So I'm like, well, you can either potentially cause an injury to yourself that'll make it complicated if you are attacked, or you can do something that will be detrimental to your party nearby. She's like, well, I'm already low on health. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to die. Might as well. All right, it affects everybody. And I'm like, well, you chose to do this. So everybody nearby now had to deal with her complaining about the sand and the heat and her sunburn so loudly that they didn't notice the creatures creeping up to attack and to take the meat off the ground that was there.
Oh, no.
So everybody was at -2 to all their rolls for wear, and nobody rolled high enough to see it at that point, and they were ambushed.
Yike. I love that. I love that so much. There's something just more natural about that, because you're giving the players so much more agency. And I feel like between that and like you're actively trying to combat that whole, and I really despise this, like the GM is the one we're fighting. No,
you're not fighting the GM.
You're not fighting the GM. Come on. And like this is built to help get rid of a lot of those stereotypes.
Absolutely.
That's
you know, when you're playing as the GM as well, you're a player at the table, sure, but this is not about you. To think that your story, or to think that the actions that you're taking, or to think that the NPCs that you're putting out there that you have all the control over are central to what's going on is narcissistic. It's egoistic. It's not about you. You are there to make sure that everybody else around your table is capable and having a good time with you. Yeah. So that's very much in the spirit of what this game is about. It's pulling the GM back and saying, raise up your players, you know, look at them and recognize how amazing they are, and sit there and revel in their actions, enjoy their successes, fanboy or fangirl or fan whatever about them, because in the end, that's what it's worth. If everybody there is grinning and smiling and having good times and talking about your stories well after the fact and excited to get back into the next one, you're doing it right.
150,000%. Yes. Oh my gosh. That's I want to put, okay, so I know we're jumping around, but there's just so much cool stuff in here. I want to put up one of these images you sent me of some of the weapons that we were talking about beforehand, because I'm going to call someone out. I'm going to call Steve out on this one. If this isn't a gun that Teddy would have, you're wrong. Buddy, we're going to talk about that later. Because this how fun is this? Oh my gosh. So this weapon, for example, I just put up the Addison gun. So it's glowing. Tell me why it's glowing.
Well, every single weapon in the game is manufactured. Well, okay. So there are three major manufacturers in the game. There's three of them out there that are particularly well designed, that have kind of controlled the market when it comes to everything out there. There's Addison, there's Edmonton, and there is Harkins. Every single one of these weapons is vastly customizable. Each one of them has mod slots on them that you can upgrade and add things to. You can make them magical in some ways. You can choose not to. You can have them shoot beams of aether fire if you like your lasers, your pew-pews. Or of course, you can just keep them the way that they are. So every single one of these manufacturers has some very specific aspects to them. Addison is the most across the board, even typed weaponry. It is designed that if you have a critical failure on it, the gun jams, it takes an action just to fix it. That's it. And their guarantee is that it's never going to blow up in your hand, which unfortunately Edmonton doesn't have that as a guarantee. Edmonton weapons are high power, they're high caliber, they fire bigger rounds, they do more damage. When you critically fail, they explode in your hand, causing damage to you. And firing off, the shot still goes off. You get a second roll when you critically fail with them. And if you hit, it does double damage. But the gun exploded. So there was that. And Harkins is actually the premier technology provider in the Aether sphere. They make a bunch of medical equipment. They make replacement body parts that you can use if you're damaged or whatever like that. They create what are called aether meds, which are like the best healing item you can get in the game. That's not magical. That's not a mage.
Okay.
And their weapons are called the Harkin's True Shot line. They're highly accurate. They give you bonuses to accuracy. Their damage is a little bit lower, but they're very, very accurate. But when they critically miss, when they have a critical failure, they shoot 5 feet to either the left or right of your target and hit anything in the way.
Oh no.
So you're just so used to this being so accurate. Oh no, the scope was off. Crap. I just shot my ally in the back. What?
That might cause a whole other problem. Yeah.
The rifle that I shared with you in there is the Addison's premier weapon. That is the Aether Lance. It is a high caliber magical sniper rifle.
Wow.
That fires 1,000 feet without having any reductions in accuracy. Does a ton of damage. Can take out the shields on airships or on any war machine that has them. But it's one shot. And then it takes a full action, which is the entire round, to reload the thing.
Dang. Oh, it's so cool. I would like to point out to everyone that Ty does all of this art himself. He's like a one-man stock shop for everything.
Hey, I didn't always start that way. I was a writer, to be honest, to begin with. And I was a portrait artist. So I did the occasional image. If you check out DeviantArt, Lottie and Star on DeviantArt, you can see some of my old stuff like way down the row. When I first started making this book, I wrote it all out first. It was all blank. It was all written. There was no images. There was nothing. I added some like temporary stuff into my book to be like, okay, well, this is what it could look like if we had images in it. And then I went, I'm going to go find out how much it costs for art. Oh, it's 50 hours a piece. Oh, that's $2,500 for that one image. I think I'm gonna have to do it myself. So I went from charcoal and pencil just on paper to getting tablets out and starting to use those. And then I spent like 2 years straight teaching myself how to do art. And now all of the stuff is mine. I'm actually talking to you on a 23-inch Art Pro tablet. So really good budget. Honestly, I don't have a lot of money myself. I'm a father of 2 and I live in a small community that doesn't have great jobs. And because of COVID, I'm unemployed other than doing this stuff. I'm freelancing art and stuff. So this Art Pro tablet, I think they ran them like $200 or $300. They were so cheap for artistry tablets. Yeah, they were insanely cheap. And they work great. I mean, they're not as good as like your Cintiqs and your high top of the line stuff, but they work very well for what you're looking for. So I got lucky with that. And that's
very cool.
That's not related to any of the things that I'm doing other than the art that I'm working on. I'm just going to plug that right here. Not sponsored.
Yeah, not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored. No, I always marvel at, I have like zero artistic talent. So I always marvel at people, especially when you're self-taught like that. And it just, maybe it's my impatience that I can't.
It takes a lot of
do that, but it's
a lot of
really
dedication.
Cool.
Absolutely, a lot of dedication. If you see the image that I just shared with you now, that was actually something I did almost a year ago. So my style has improved greatly since then.
Yeah.
But that's a representation of orcs in my game. So
that's really cool. Gosh.
I do have a lot of really powerful feelings about society in general, about some of the political climate that's occurred when it came to TTRPGs and things like that. In my game, there is no such thing as an evil race.
Thank you.
And I mean, there is a mindless zombie type monster in space that is based on my experiences in like Dead Space, but it's not really a thing. It's not a living, breathing, really thinking thing.
Right.
All the races have reasons for the way they do things. All of the races have, it's black and white. It is not, it's shades of gray. It's shades of gray, not black and white. There's no such thing as black and white. Everybody who tends to do bad things is often thinking they're doing the right thing, even if they're really, really wrong. Yeah. So when it came to creating and world building and universe creation of this, I really took that to heart in looking at why are the reasons why some people did things. The Elven monarchy, as an example, ruled for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. The elves are immortal. They live forever. They tend to think in super, super long term, and that put them in a position where they started seeing people as resources and started using them towards goals that they were trying to accomplish. and oftentimes would cover it up to avoid the bad PR and bad press. And when people started getting smart to that, that's when the Empire decided to rise up. The Empire was the dwarves. They were the peacekeeping arm of the monarchy. They tended to be the right-hand man type or right-hand figures of the Empire.
Sure.
Or of the monarchy. And then when they realized that there was too many things going wrong, when the monarchy started doing scientific experimentation on people related to thallium, these monsters and things. I'll show you I'll show you an image of thallium.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So thallium means the fruiting body of a spore of a slime mold.
Oh.
And that is where I got the idea for these types of monsters. So they are these creatures that are unable to exist inside of high pressure atmospheres. They can only kind of exist in space. They steal flesh and things like that to make themselves mobile.
Ooh.
They're pretty gnarly beings.
Yeah.
And yeah, where is it at here? I've got it around here somewhere.
You have piqued my interest. Even more than I'm already super excited about this, but I'm just like, what? Flesh
I'm just
monsters?
I'm just gonna make you wait for like 10 minutes while I look for this forever.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
So this is a thallium.
Oh gosh.
They just kind of absorb and take the bits and things of everything that's around them. They attack travelers and individuals that are out there in the universe. And
can I share this? Can I put this on the stream? Okay, I didn't want to spoil
that's up
anything.
to you if you
I mean, okay, so yeah, we'll do this real quick. Content warning. It's gnarly,
content warning.
y'all.
Like I said, my game can be used to play as many different types of I guess games as you want to try to create.
Yeah.
When it comes to like survival horror, I have options for that.
Yeah, yes, tell me more. That's my jam right there.
So a lot of stories could be told surrounding these monsters, surrounding the deep places of space, surrounding some of the worlds that are out there. So you're looking for something that's more of a survival horror-esque campaign. One of the worlds, the world that the halflings called their home, Myocenes, was hit by this magical weapon called the genophage. It's what killed most halflings. It's what converted a lot of them into these Skixen that turned them into the mouse creatures that they are today. And their homeworld was already relatively swampy, but now is this biome of massive fungal growths and huge insects. There are these creatures out there that are constantly hunting down people and trying to kill them. One of them, which is like the Koslov. They are a kind of like a cave spider if it was hyper smart and had the ability to exude pheromones that would cause you to be attracted to come into its waiting maw where it would eat you alive. There are these hunter mantises that are out there that are constantly stalking the people that live on Myocenes. And the Empire doesn't have a lot of a foothold there. After they kind of wiped it out, they really haven't been back much. So when you play a campaign that's set there, it can be played off as a survival horror. You've got these massive creatures that are constantly hunting you, and you have to try to figure out a way to secure yourself and survive and take care of your allies and things like that. And then, of course, when you're traveling through the void on your airships, you're traveling through space using your magical technology, there are a lot of opportunities for old stations that have been out there that maybe you want to, we got to go salvage this place, or there's this artifact there that we've heard about. We need to get involved there. And you climb on board and there's like blinking lights and there's like, old technology that's still kind of working, but not entirely. And then you hear as monsters start coming down the corridor. You find yourself
there
you're suddenly inside of a dark and dangerous place. So yeah, we had one game. I have a module that at some point I will be releasing in the future called The Messengers, where you play this crew of individuals who are trying to deliver something really important to the safety of the Empire far across the reaches of space. And one of the first hops that you make it to is Outpost 119. And this place, you get inside, everybody seems hunky-dory, it's all cool. And then, wham, the station takes a hit. This massive glob of thallium smashed into it. It's hunting you for some reason. And then the whole place is overrun and you have to escape from there and get away from it all and get onto your ship and take off while this stuff continues chasing you down across the universe. So that's one module I get.
Just one? Oh my gosh.
Just one.
Can I play it now? That sounds like a blast. No, but seriously, that sounds like a ton of fun. And the adaptability of the system and all of the different ways that you are giving folks ideas on how to use your rule set, how to use your worlds and your peoples and your classes, just everything the way that it's set up is so inspiring because it lets people play the games that they want to play. And that's the key part.
Totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. This thing is gnarly AF. I am like, ah!
I actually have an older concept too from like a year ago. I'm trying to find here. Let's see, because they do have a variety of different forms, and they do have a variety of different looks to them based on what they've consumed. Here was another one.
What they've consumed. Ugh.
Yeah, what have they absorbed into them that makes them stronger? So there's another one.
Oh my gosh. Y'all, I gotta put this up. That's like, I freaking love this stuff. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited. All right, so while I'm getting that on the screen, we've got a few minutes left. So the link to the Kickstarter is in chat. Obviously, excellent. I want everybody to go back this thing like right now because I think you should. Just from what Ty has told us, because it is very cool and you seem like a great person. And of course, we're thrilled to have you on here. So for a GM who has, we'll say this, for someone who is thinking about GMing, I found a friend of mine in this very recent situation. And he was very hesitant, to jump into something as complicated as some of these other systems. How quickly do you think like a new GM could get up and running with this game?
Well, what they would want to do, the first thing that I recommend is getting people set up and always run a session 0 so everybody knows who their character is and how to play. But so you would come in there, you sit with your friends, you all sit down, you make a character, you make their characters together so you understand who they are. Once you've done that, then you just have to do some work on your own. You sit down in the afternoon or the evening, you take maybe a week, you look through the book and get some ideas based on some of the story hooks. I will have an entire section in there that is GM's assistant that'll talk to you about how games should be run, how some of these things, well, not should be run, but how the games can be run. How you can use some of the story elements that your characters create for you just to enhance your own stories, how to kind of direct those and move them forward, and basically how to run the game simply. From a GM's perspective, my game is designed to be easy to run. You kind of can make up it's fantastical. You can kind of make up whatever you want, but if you need a little extra hand holding, there are sections in the book that will do that for you. There's some preset guidelines on how monsters are supposed to look, what the Aethalium are, what the Empire are, what some of the factions are. If you're going to have your players play against the Empire in some sort of like Rebel Alliance versus the Empire situation. Then there are stats in there for what soldiers are like, how they would fight, that kind of thing. And for some political intrigue stuff, all that kind of stuff. All of that is in there to make it easy. And for GMs, I have the simplest of monster creation or enemy creation tables. I have 4 different types of enemies. They are simple, challenging, elite, and nemesis. Your nemesis, they're the big bads, they're the end game bad guys. And each one of these has a little stat block that just says, okay, if you want to make them on the fly, they have roughly this many hit points. They can do one of these things. Put them in, you now have a character that can be played instantly, and you can make 100 of them because they all are exactly the same or they're modified the way you want. If you want to be able to have Empire soldiers who, some of them carry grenades, some of them have flamethrowers, and some of them, can jump and fly distances, there are very quick and easy rules to make those up so that you can do it on the fly without bogging yourself down or having to memorize a million skills that your opponents have, things like that. Nemesis enemies, on the other hand, are a little more complicated because they have a host of skills. They have a host of things that they can do. They can impact political environment. They can have allies, that kind of thing. So,
and by the time you get to a nemesis, the GM's got a little more.
Yeah, you'll have the experience. It's like this. We've already played combat scenes. We know what that's like. I've kind of put in this one figure who seems to be the shady background character who maybe has more to do with them, and then I'll develop them later a little bit more because they're not important right now because you're never going to run into them.
Right.
So And it does tell you what the major factions are in the game. If you're trying to play something related to empires, if you're trying to deal with people that are fighting against mages, if you're trying to see what directions you want to travel in with your game, there's whole sections that will describe what that might look like. There's even a whole faction that is called the what are they called again? Shoot, it's been such a long time since I looked at that section of my book. I can't remember, so
That's all right.
I'm just gonna turn red and just forget about it for now. There was something
No
important
worries.
there.
Are you kidding me? The amount of stuff that is, I'm sure, is sitting in your brain is just
the Brotherhood without manners. That's what it's called. It's
dang.
It's a Game of Thrones reference for anybody that knows. Anyways, and what they are is average people in every single society that, if they are treated unfairly, start to do random things to people in establishments, at stores, at rest stops, or when you're getting your food or having that delivered or whatever. All of those individuals start doing things to people that they don't like. So you could be part of that.
Yeah.
Or if you happen to have some murder hobos in your party that have gone through a town and just wiped out somebody they shouldn't, you might get on their bad side, and suddenly every time you sleep, your bed's full of fleas. Who knows?
It's like the red jennies in Dragon Age. It's like,
yeah.
I love that.
So yeah, I do have a section that I feel like if a brand new GM were to come in and look at it, it gives my recommendations. Obviously, it gives my perception on how the game should be run, and it puts when I play my games, there's a lot less weight on me in particular, because there is something to be said about no great plan ever comes to fruition as soon as it reaches the ground. There are going to be players out there. You could plan for 2 million years, and a player is going to come along and do something you don't expect to happen, and then suddenly you have to wing it. So being able to wing it is the biggest benefit and the largest thing that's going to reduce the stress on your shoulders as a GM. And being okay with the idea that I didn't prep that, but you know what? Everybody's having fun doing it anyway.
Right. And you have ready to go stat blocks and things you can do to pull up real fast, which I do find is a challenge in a lot of systems where it's like, and you're, I've like, definitely been there. Yeah. It's like,
these characters are level 2. They just got in a bar fight. The peacekeepers have come in to try to clear things up, but they decided to fight them. What do I do now? Oh, well, each one of them has 10 health. Each one of them gets +1 to an attack roll and +2 to defense roll. All right, we're good to go. Oh, and they have one special ability. I just have to make sure I determine what that is. And that's it. It's as fast as that. Suddenly you have 5 people on the street and you're good to go. The only thing that I can't provide all of you yet is tokens and battle maps and figurines and,
Fingers crossed that we can get you there.
That would be nice.
That would be
In the meantime, you can use any map setting you've got there. My game is designed to use hexes. It's designed to use squares. Nice. It's designed to use existing battle maps, existing figurines, and things you might want to use. They're all roughly going to be the same size. So, you don't have to go spend extra money doing things. You could even do what I used to do. You ever see those little fish tank marbles that are like flat on one side and they're colored on the other? Yeah. Totally. You get like 100 of those, and then suddenly you have an army. And
done that. Used marbles. Used
dice,
washers.
And my wife bought me this little pack of those mini D6s. There's like 40 of them in there. Yes. And they were very tiny, and I would just use those. And you could actually turn the number on them, so you could be like, okay, these guys all belong to number 6 group, and these guys all belong to number 4 group.
Yep. I really love that as well, because it's so easy to spend so much money. So much money in it, even as a casual gamer. I've heard casual gamers start to they either fall down the hole of collecting dice or whatever it might be that they get in minis, whatever. So making that adaptable for what people happen to have on hand is very cool, and making it adaptable for those of us who run games completely online.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of online, I am working on a Fantasy Grounds adaptation of my game.
Nice.
So it would be nice to be able to put that out there. I have an unofficial one right now. Some of it I have to determine if all of this is going to be, copyrightable or not, or if it has to go out there under some anonymous name and it wasn't me and you never heard it from me here at all whatsoever.
Nope, don't know what you're talking about.
But I did share a screenshot of it with you with one of the characters from my game there that shows you the way the sheet looks and that kind of thing. Like I said, I'm also a programmer, so I
Nice.
went in and right now it's set up for Fantasy Grounds, but I'm hoping to at some point have Fantasy Grounds, Roll20,
Roll
and a
20.
few other systems
Yeah.
eventually put that in. I just have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't even know where to start. So kudos to you on that one because that makes
Oh.
my brain hurt.
I went from working on Java, JavaScript, C+, and C Sharp over to XML, which is what
Okay.
Fantasy Grounds runs in, and it's
Yeah.
like speaking two different languages, but some words overlap.
Right.
So
Oh man, this is just I'm so excited. I really encouraging everyone to go back this. I wouldn't say that unless I truly believed in it, and I do think what you've got here is something super unique but also just incredibly accessible.
well, thank you for having me here. I'm glad I got to, share it out there a little bit further.
Heck yeah, anything that we can do. So I was keeping an eye on chat. Didn't have any questions. We don't usually, but I like to make sure just in case.
Yeah.
And thank you for the follow. So any last words of wisdom or anything else you want to share you haven't gotten to talk about?
Well, one of the goals of this game is to be community centric. So once I've gotten to a point where people are starting to buy this and starting to stream this and everything like that, you can bet for one that I will be checking them out and geeking out, and then probably either like going, "Why didn't I think of that?" or "It's not supposed to be done that way." One or the
Right.
other. But I will be tying these amazing stories that everybody has into further products in the game in the future in some way. So I want this to feel like a community-based game at some point where everybody that's involved in one way or another can start to develop the way the story goes, the way the future of the system is. And I even have friends who are working on maybe turning it into the video games and stuff too. So, you know,
What? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it's hopefully going to go far. If you want to check out the game in play over on Dice Tyrants, Twitch TV/Dice Tyrants, we run a campaign twice a week. We have one on Mondays, which is called Dragons of Rulo. It is about an orc tribe on Rulo who is trying to avert a catastrophe as this dragon like raises up every few hundred years and just destroys everything in the valley.
Oh gosh.
And then we have Clockwork Zephyr on Thursday. So that's 8 Central Time on Mondays and 7:30 Central on Thursdays. Clockwork Zephyr is about this crew of individuals on this really advanced aether ship that are looking to, well, they're trying to be pirates, but they're doing a horrible job of that. They've been helping people mostly. There's been very little pirating whatsoever happening. But they're about to have things turn down a different rabbit hole as they travel way beyond where they should be and have to Star Trek Voyager it back home and then figure that kind of stuff out. So you can check it out. You see how the systems work. I've got rules in there for airship to airship combat in space and how you deal with war machines, which are like really big automatons. Yeah, so that's it. I've got a lot of big plans, and I hope to bring them all to fruition. And now that I'm funded, I at least get part of it, and I can continue working on the rest of it. So
congratulations on getting funded. That's super exciting.
I'm very happy about that.
I'm so happy about all of this. Everything just made me happy, and then you say things like airship to airship combat in space, and I go, tell me more. Okay.
Their sizes. So I have a ranking system on airships, and it gives a basis of what their stats are, and then it has positions aboard the ship that give it the way that it acts in combat. So if you're in a situation where you're fighting people, it is a 2D plane, so you're not looking at, I mean, you can do 3D maneuvers, you can describe that in your mind, whatever, but every single one of the positions on the ship takes part on the ship's turn, and then that gives benefits to your captain, can provide bonuses to your gunner or your helmsman or your navigator or whatever it is that you're trying to advance, and then each one of them gets their own little action, and then it moves around scene by scene by scene. So
nice.
And then you can of course get in close combat and crash into things and have everybody jump on board the ship and then have to fight them that way, and then
boarding party. Oh man. So anyways, again, the Kickstarter link is in chat. You can follow Ty at Lot Evenstar on Twitter. You can go directly to Kickstarter, which is what I want you to do. Please go do that.
That would be great.
Go, that would be awesome.
If you just want to come help me get that art book realized, that'd be great.
Dope. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for spending the last about 90 minutes here on
My pleasure.
Worldbuilders.
It was a lot of fun.
Yay, good. I'm super excited about this, and I am definitely going to be keeping my eye on what Ty is doing now and in the future, so there's no time like the present. Go back to Kickstarter! Go do it now! You have your marching orders! Go, go, go! And then...
Absolutely.
Don't miss our stream weekend that we've got going on. We were like, hey, it's a holiday weekend in the U.S. Sure, let's do a bunch of stuff.
Weekend.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it now. So we are back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern for our 3-year streaming party, because we've been a group for 3 years, so that's what's happening.
Oh boy.
We're not doing anything other than sitting around and telling ghost stories, because we can.
Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's an international group, so we gotta. If Sam doesn't tell me about their ghost sheep again, I'm gonna be very disappointed. Apparently, there's a ghost sheep in Norway.
Ghost sheep in Norway.
Ghost sheep in Norway. Sam, you've been called out. And then Sunday, Curse of Strahd returns for game 10 that I'll be running, and then Monday, Sam and I are gonna play Dragon Age. So. We will see you all then. Thank you, Ty, very much. Super appreciate your time, and we'll catch you all later. Goodbye, everybody.